The big discussion now is, if you're the Jazz, if you're Quinn Snyder, regular season, what's your best starting five? Who are the five you put out there to start? Is it Ed Davis playing alongside of Rudy Gobert, or is it Jeff Green in that 4 spot with Bogdanovich at the 3 and maybe bringing your guy Joe off the bench?
It's a great question. So what my best guess would be Jeff Green as your starting 4 alongside Rudy, and then Bogdanovich is your 3, and then it's Donovan and it's Conley. That's my best guess. But I think there's a small chance that Jeff Green and Ed Davis come off the bench, and Bogdanovich and Ingles are your starting 4s.
Okay.
Now, that change, what's going to be fascinating is the Jazz completely changed their team. Okay, so what has not been questions in the last few years? Defense, rebounding, no question. Jazz are an elite rebounding team. They're an elite defensive team. And now I think there's genuine questions about whether or not the Jazz have enough rebounding and defense if they start Bogdanovich and Ingles as your starting forwards. Jeff Green, better rebounder than Bogdanovich, much better defender. And obviously Ed Davis is an elite rebounder. So the question is, how much of a change are you comfortable with? Okay, and if Quinn just wants to completely change it all, because here's the other thing, and I talked about this on the pod. I have believed for years that the way the Jazz have played has been completely out of necessity, not out of wants. I think Quinn wants to play a more of an up-tempo, open, offensive style attack of basketball.
Hasn't had the personnel to do it.
No. So one of the things you have to do as a coach is you have to play with the hand you've been dealt. And so when I think it became apparent that Rudy was so unique and so dominant and Ennis could not guard, you trade Ennis, doesn't matter what you get for him. You start Rudy next to Fave, and then you acquire defensive-minded players. And so the Jazz, when the entire league was zigging, the Jazz zagged to a slow-it-down, run-style football team in the NBA, right? I think Quinn wants to open it up. I think he wants to score. I think he wants to be one of those teams that scores 120, 130 on a nightly basis. And because of that, maybe it is Ingles Bogdanovich as your forwards. I don't know.
Yeah, and I love Ed Davis, and I love that Ed Davis acquisition. But if you're starting Davis next to Gobert, aren't you in essence starting Derek Favors next to Gobert once again? Because Ed's not a guy that's a step out on the floor and shoot and space the floor guy. He's 15 feet and in, go defense, go rebounding. So maybe Ed's one of your second unit guys, and if you want to play small ball later in the game, Ed becomes your center. If you need to get a little rebounding or a little bit more toughness in defense, Ed's your power forward. But maybe you start Rudy, Bogdanovich, and Joe as your, maybe you open up that way.
Yeah, I don't think Ed Davis was brought in here to start.
Right. Jeff Green next to.
Sure.
And then you just make the decision. Do we want Joe and Bogdanovich, or do we want Joe maybe to add a little scoring punch to our second unit?
Right. Or Royce O'Neal is a guy that's in this conversation, not to start, but to play some big minutes coming off the bench. I mean, the nice thing so Quinn finally, for the first time in his coaching career, has a ton of good options. We've talked before in the past about how deep the Jazz are, quote unquote deep. But I'm sure there were times where Quinn looked down his bench. In fact, I know there was a stretch where Quinn looked down his bench and he went, what is this? What am I supposed to do with this? I need some shooters. I need some playmakers, and so now he'll look down on his bench with a ton of really, really good options. So again, everybody wants to know who's going to start. That's fine. It's not a big deal who finishes, who plays the bulk of the big minutes, and how does Quinn utilize all this talent he has.
Here's the best news, though, in this age where we're talking about load management and getting guys nights off, especially if the Jazz are going to be a team that makes a deep run into the playoffs. You've now got enough talent on your roster that if somebody isn't feeling well or they might have tweaked something and they're a 50-50 go, you can sit them that night.
Right.
Because you've got enough talent. The last couple of years, to be very fair, the Jazz have not had much room for margin for error for a key player to miss some time. Now, if you want to give Rudy a night off because his back's acting up a little bit, play Ed Davis some major minutes and then Jeff Green next to him. Or, if Donovan needs a night off, probably will at some point in time, you give him the night off and you slide Joe Ingles down to the 2, Bogdanovich at the 3, Green's at the 4.
Right.
I mean, you've got those options now that maybe the last couple of years you were a lot thinner on the bench.
And I think because of what we just saw in Toronto with the Kawhi Leonard load management, and it allowed Kawhi to be super fresh for the playoffs, where Nick Nurse didn't have to rest him very much. I think that's going to be a trend that kind of leaks and bleeds over to pretty much every team in the NBA, where it's because most teams in the NBA can survive an injury here or there, but very few teams can survive an injury or two to key guys. So for the Jazz, knock on wood, the guy who you cannot afford to lose is Rudy Gobert. And so if Rudy somehow goes down for an extended period of time in the postseason, all of this is for naught. So you have to make sure he's as healthy as possible. So don't be surprised if around the league, Jazz, any team, whatever, your favorite team, your marquee guys play about 60 to 65 games instead of trying to stretch it because nobody cares about, Stockton used to talk about how much it meant to him at the end of the season to see 82 next to his name.
Right.
Nobody cares about that anymore.
No.
Like the days of Bruce Bowen wanting to play 82, like it's gone. I don't know how many NBA guys really care about that. So what you care about is staying healthy in the playoffs. Load management, Rudy, Donovan, guys like that are probably going to play 60, 65 games now. Would be my guess.
All right.